You read it right, NX console is getting lit. But before we get too crazy, let's take a walk down memory lane. In some of our past videos about NX console, we've talked about some of the history, how NX console started out as a VS Code plugin, and since then we've added support for an NX language service, so IDEs like Vim or NeoVim can take advantage of some of the tooling that NX console has to offer. And by leveraging the NX daemon, we were able to reuse a lot of the code that we used to build NX console originally for VS Code to then introduce our NX console JetBrains plugin. We're going to go back even further to 2018 when the NX console was actually called the Angular console. And instead of being an IDE plugin, it was actually a self-contained Electron app. Back then, pandemics were things that happened in the 1920s, and I was a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed junior engineer that had just started at NX. Back then, it seemed like Angular might just win this thing if people could just get past the fact that it was using TypeScript, which is kind of ironic looking back at things now. If you really want to go down memory lane, check out this video from Fireship. This channel was actually called Angular Firebase at the time. That goes into all the cool features of the original Angular console. But given that the tool started as a tool specifically for Angular, it only made sense that we'd build the thing in Angular. So we did and released it as an Electron app. It would have access to your file system, so it could do things like generate files. And it could also run tasks like your lints and your tests and your builds, similar to what NX does now. So as time went on, it became evident to us that we wanted a more integrated experience, and we took the Electron app and put it into a VS Code extension instead, so it would be closer to developers right there as part of their IDE. As NX expanded to be a more general use task runner and monorepo toolset, we changed the branding from Angular console to NX console, but we were able to keep a lot of the original code around. But over time, Angular's dominion inside of NX console had dwindled down to just the generator form. So for the simple form, we really didn't need routing or network requests or modules or any of the other nice things that come with Angular. And Angular just comes with a lot of boilerplate and overhead that we didn't want to deal with anymore. So this is where NX console gets lit. Now, lit is a lightweight framework that's built on top of web components, and its tagline is that it gives you just enough to be happy and productive. If lit is piquing your interest, be sure to check out Max's article on the topic, which goes into detail of some of the cool developer tools that he used in order to get the web form done. This includes some cool lit features like reactive controllers, and he also took advantage of some TypeScript features, including class mixins, in order to share some code, but not all code, between some of our form fields that are similar, but not identical. We're also able to separate out things so that the VS Code version can use the VS Code WebView UI toolkit and look native to VS Code, and the JetBrains version can make the form look more native to JetBrains, like here we can see in IntelliJ. So we did all that, and we took advantage of some of the NX goodies that you get. For example, we used the NX ES build plugin to make our builds really nice and fast. And we use the NX Cyclist plugin so we can make sure we have a comprehensive test suite so that we can protect ourselves from regressions as we introduce more features in the future. And once all the dust is cleared, the results are pretty good. Just looking at performance in regards to startup time, we saw a 1.7 times improvement in VS Code and a 1.5 times improvement inside of IntelliJ. Our bundle size saw an even bigger improvement as we mentioned, Angular comes with a lot of tools that we weren't using. So at the end of the day, we went from 733 kilobytes down to 282 kilobytes, which is a 2.6 times improvement. Now, when you download the newest version of NX console, it's just a one-time download, and you probably won't notice it if you're in VS Code. I believe you do have to manually choose to install the latest version inside of IntelliJ, but there too, it's a one-time thing. So not the biggest deal, but it's still nice to see an improvement there. And the last piece here is build times. Now with the Angular version, we were using the Angular builder, which is Webpack based, and we saw build times of 3.5 seconds. And as we mentioned, we're using ES build now, and a fresh build process now takes us a whopping 2 seconds, which is actually a little less than we had hoped for, but that's still a 40% decrease. And a snappier dev experience really can go a long way in terms of removing friction that can compound working through a frustrating bug into a much worse experience. But in my opinion, the greatest win for NX console via this migration is the fresh new code of Paint inside of the generator UI. I really like it both in VS Code and in IntelliJ. And I'm no designer, but I've been around web dev enough to know when a design is working, and I think this is working. And a shout out to our NX console team in terms of the reliability of the plugin. If you go back a couple of years, Angular console and then NX console was a little hit or miss when it came to installing a new version. But NX console has been really solid for me for the last year or so. I pretty much use it every day. So big shout out to both Johnny Toronto and Max for their work here. I think those regression tests are really paying off. If you're using NX and you're using VS Code or IntelliJ, you really should be using NX console. If not for the generator UI, which I think is really great for discoverability, then you should at least be using it for some of the tools like the ability to look at the NX graph right there in your IDE, or the IntelliSense you get inside of NX specific files like your project JSONs and your NX JSONs. And remember, you can also use that NX language server if you're using something crazy like Vim or NeoVim. I don't get it, but Victor likes it, so It must be good. But that's all we got this time, y'all. Huge shout out to Max for doing a lot of the work here and for putting together the article. Go check it out. I love that we can bring y'all tools like the NX console that's hopefully making your dev experience better every day. Keep working hard, y'all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.